Happy Friday.
Happy Friday. How's your week been?
Been good, man. It's been good. It's been going by fast. It's kind of rainy here in Minnesota, but it was fun. I was telling you yesterday we had the Minnesota logistics get together. I was like 50 people. I want to
Yeah,
say maybe even more.
it looks like a big group down there.
Yeah, it was fun. It was fun. Great location. Got to meet some companies I wasn't familiar with, and yeah, it was a really good time.
Yeah, it's awesome. Yeah, you mentioned the rain. We could use some rain down here. It's about 95 degrees down in Birmingham.
You could use a lot of rain.
Yeah, no kidding. Well, yeah. So this is actually episode 11. I fixed the title. I know it's showing 10 for us, Matt, but we've got an exciting guest this Friday. Matt, you want to touch on a little bit on his background?
Yeah, definitely. So Brad was the co-founder and COO of Hometown Logistics for, he'll tell us, I believe 6 years. They're I think, I don't know the exact numbers, but 200, 250, 300, multi, 10-figure brokerage or 9-figure. And yeah, he's, involved before that in multiple, different, startups. He's a startup guy, as he would tell you. And then now he's, doing a business, kind of helping carriers understand their P&Ls, get direct customers and kind of helping with carriers while just running, a small agent book. He's not retired by any means, but he stepped back from the, being in the office every day, growing up a, brokerage. I'm pretty sure Hometown was one, if not the fastest growing brokerage in the Midwest over the last 7 years. So just super smart guy, knowledgeable, and yeah, it should be fun. Let's not forget our sponsors too. You want to start? I always do the Sales Dash one, but since you're a Sales Dash customer now, you should do it.
Yeah, before we get started, shout out to our sponsors, Sales Dash CRM. My company, Black Box, we actually use Sales Dash. It's fantastic. It's reasonably priced. And the founder, Josh, has a background in brokerage. So it's kind of already built out for what you would need with some templates. So it's been the best CRM I've been exposed to for what we do. Would highly recommend them. And again, we use it within my company. Additional shout out to Trio. They do all of our back office support, all that good stuff. The graphics is cool. Backdrop here, they created it. Additionally, TAF's Factoring. We haven't gotten their logo added to the backdrop, but we should have it up by the next episode. And then, of course, HD Shipping Solutions, Matt's company, and then Black Box Logistics, my company.
If you're looking for a W-2 role in Alabama, hit up Will come October. If you're looking to be an agent anywhere, in the country, or actually, it doesn't have to be in the country necessarily. Hit me.
Everybody that's not in the U.S.
Yeah, we have agents in Canada.
Okay.
And depending on where else, it can be, it depends on where else. But we currently have agents in Canada. But some of the other places, it kind of just depends.
Yeah, that makes sense. Well, here, let's go ahead and bring Brad on the stage and let's get started.
Yeah, let's do it.
Hey guys,
Brad, what's happening? Happy Friday.
Happy Friday.
It's I was telling you before the stage, it's good to put a name to a face, and we've talked several times, but it's really great to have you on. We're excited to have you.
Yeah, thanks for taking a break from riding the motorcycle to join us and talk for a bit.
Yeah, I appreciate it, Will. Nice to put a face to your name and talk to you. We obviously interesting platform, interesting things you guys are doing. A lot of exciting things in both of your worlds. So interested to chat.
Yeah, should be fun. Well, kind of just to give us a brief background. How did you kind of get it? We like to ask everyone this. I mean, how did you kind of get into freight? What was kind of your first, freight role? Kind of just tell us a little bit about your, background.
So, I had owned an advertising agency that I sold, and I'm kind of big into classic cars and all that stuff. And we have a dealership, and we built some cars for Mecum and stuff. So I had shipped cars before, right? Like personally. And what ended up happening was I sold the advertising agency. I actually sold that dealership and restoration garage. And I didn't do anything for about a year, believe it or not. And I came across just honestly a rep's job for Hometown is how this got started. Before, like, they were going to do an agent model, which I don't even think you've heard this part before, Matt, right?
No, I did not know that.
And so, like, I met with who's still the COO, Nate, and, you know, I ended up coming on board, and I'd gone through a lot of startups, right? So car dealerships, advertising, and I've just always kind of been a ditch digger, right? Done a bunch of NBD for guys and a bunch of tech crap. And basically, within a couple of weeks, you know, he and I are making joint decisions. It's just kind of how it worked out. And, you know, it was like, well, you're going to need a right-hand guy. I became that instantly before we were live, right? So, like, when you're saying, hey, founder and whatever, that's just how that occurred. And I don't know why, but something just clicked in freight with me. My grandparents were on my mother's side were farmers, and they had semi trucks actually. So like I've been around this my whole life, but Hometown was really like the first freight job I ever actually had. So that's that in a nutshell, really.
So was it just you at the beginning, you and, you know, some of the other, you know, founders, just you guys, you know, the first day at the office, just, you know, because you were kind of, I mean, you had shipped cars previously, but I mean, you were having to learn, you know, brokerage, you know, on the spot. You know, you see sometimes, you know, founders, you know, they've been, you know, reps at other employees or other brokerage, but you were really learning, you know, the sales and the operations and everything kind of, you know, yourself, right?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, Nate, you know, was a Celadon guy. If you guys are familiar with Celadon Logistics, he was there for like 8 years. He was a VP. So, you know, he was definitely there to guide us all, but and great guy, right? But yeah, I mean, that was June 4th of our first year, 17, I think, or 18, whatever, right? And I mean, it was just it was very much a fast and loose startup, and vetting tech companies and figuring out our lead systems and the credit challenges that you go through, the back end office challenges you go through, the growing pains. So day one, I mean, we were hitting the phones by day 2 trying to sell. And, you know, I didn't know what the fuck that was. Excuse my French. I didn't know any of that stuff. Right. But that was my favorite part. Really, honestly, year 1 was my favorite part of Hometown. Just be like, because it was fast and loose and messy, and we're launching tons of accounts, and we're scrambling for credit to pay trucks, and you know, like I like that. Like I love chaos and disruption, and that's what it was. And you know, we started hiring. I mean, we're hiring right away. There's a guy that's a massive part of Hometown right now named Zach Biddle. He's there. Still running a large team, very successful guy. You know, he was in it for that. And then, you know, we just started hiring instantly, and we reinvested it in people, right? Because that's what you do in this. And, you know, we doubled every year. I haven't asked Nate what's going on now. I know they're launching a ton of accounts, so I'm sure the same thing will happen again this year for them. So, which gets hard, right?
Yeah, no, not easy to double, you know, year over year, because you guys are up now to what, around 100 employees plus or minus, I would say.
Yeah, there's a little over 100. So those doubles get dramatically more difficult, as I'm sure Will probably knows, and you do too, Matt, right?
Yeah. As just hearing you talk about the startup, right? I'm the same way. My favorite year with Black Box was the first one. Everything's exciting, right? You don't know what each day's a little bit different. You're bringing people on. Everything's just new and exciting, right? And it makes sense, Brad. I don't know you super well, but it makes sense. You talk about, hey, you're this startup guy. We get in the backstage, and you're talking about going to ride your motorcycle. You strike me as the kind of guy that likes to move quickly.
Yeah, I mean, and sometimes that's not good for long term, right? Like, yeah. just to be honest, like, so as in Nate, the CEO of Hometown, is like, you know, his vision and my vision, we're not the same guy, right? Mm-hmm. Like, one of the reasons why I decided to resign was because I am not a corporate dude, and Hometown is not that they're corporate per se, but like, I'm a startup. I I like training people, and when you get to the size that they've gotten to, now you have training teams and now you have backup, blah, 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 right? All that stuff's great and good, but that's not one. I'm 46 years old too, man. Like, to be quite frank, I don't mind training people, but some kid coming out of, let's say, Alabama State University, that's even a college, and at 22 is not really it's not my gas anymore, right? Like, I'm old, I'm almost 50 years old. So it was time for me to leave that type of environment, but I'm still heavily tied to them,
No, that's awesome hearing you talk about it. Just from my experience too, like the business changes, right? As you grow from day one to year two, it looks a lot different, right? Like as you get bigger, there's lots of rules, SOPs, regulations. It's just, again, it's just different at a certain point in the business, and you kind of got to change and adapt, or maybe decide, hey, this isn't, what gets me out of bed every morning. It's not the same. Maybe I'm going to go spend my time and resources doing something that gets me excited, right? So it's really cool to hear your insight and experience on that.
Like, Hometown was super awesome for me because, like, I was involved in P&L, I was involved in tech, I was involved in writing all of our sales pitches, all of our SOPs, right? Now, it wasn't just me. There's a massive team there and tons of people that contributed to all that. It certainly, I'm not taking any sort of credit for any of that, right? But that part is super fun to me, right? Like, that's what gets me going 100%. Now, Matt and I have talked about this a little bit more, like going in and babysitting a bunch of reps and asking if they've done their call checks. I want to blow my brains out, right? Like, that's just not me,
Makes sense. Okay.
Right.
Semi-relate.
I thought it was funny though. It was kind of around the time you left too. I mean, your daughter got to experience kind of become a family business. She was she was there, and around that time was kind of the time where you're like, well, it's not a startup anymore. Maybe it's time for me to do something else.
Yeah. So like literally, owner Hometown and Nate and everybody was kind enough to let my 17-year-old daughter intern last summer for Hometown. Right. I left after she was there a week. So that was kind of cool, but like, she helps me with Avalanche FR8 too, though. She's a nursing school, but she helps with the agency side that I have, and even a little bit with my carrier consulting, because she got a taste for it, right? So that's kind of cool. Not a legacy yet, but we'll see what happens.
Yeah, that's really cool. To be able to work with family. My dad works at Black Box, and it's one of the things I take a lot of pride in, that we can collaborate on stuff, and it just means a little bit more when family's involved, at least in my opinion.
Yeah, 100%.
How was, in the first couple of years, because you hear right now, brokerages going out of business left and right. people struggling, running into financial issues. What were some of the things that kind of set you guys apart, to have that continual growth in a lot of different markets?
Well, I think the number one thing for us that helped, and this was Nate's vision and mine, is that easy to work with, right? So when we're launching a new customer, we didn't make them sign a thing ever, right? I know that sounds maybe contrite, but like, hey, you're approved in my credit, whether you are or not, right? Because we'd roll the dice on shippers. Maybe Will does that a little bit too. I don't know.
Sometimes.
The biggest thing is that we got really good at ops, and I will take slight credit for that. But Nate Roberts is a great salesperson, and he's great at building sales teams. I helped with that. But, 3 times a week, no matter if your book was 80 grand or if it's 8 grand, you're going to class, right? And we're talking about what we each learn and what we're hearing from the shippers and what we're hearing from the carriers, right? We were also very carrier centric from Jump Street. I was fortunate enough to, as I built my book, in a month or two, after I got on the phones, that I really started to understand that the carriers were more important than my shippers. I can go get new shippers. It's not like I don't want to come across as hubris, but it's not that hard to launch accounts. It's hard to launch good accounts, right? But these accounts don't do you any good if you don't have a truck to put it on and you got a DAT rat all day, right?
Yeah.
And so it never got to where I wanted it to be across the board of, hey, we don't have to use DAT or Truck Stop or Trucker Tools or C4 or whatever capacity sourcing platform that you had. But we did a really good job of that. We also were amazingly lucky in the first year with some amazing hires that had no prior freight experience that are now leaders of Hometown. Like they're Taylor Lynch, Zach Biddle, Chris Renzi, Tim Brandt runs the Nashville location, right? These are guys that were fresh out of school or maybe just a little bit out of school that, you know, they're leading that company now, and they built their books. And I mean, these are guys that have 6-figure books too, right? I mean, they're not running their teams and doing nothing. And so the contributions that all those guys gave were just absolutely integral into the doubles that Hometown was able to achieve.
How was that? Because you mentioned you had those weekly meetings where, you know, an 80K rep, you know, if they were doing 80K or 8K, that they were, you know, in those meetings. You know, was there a pretty big buy-in at Hometown? Because I feel like
those are opt-in, or they were. I haven't talked to Nate about them in a year, right? But I know they're still occurring. Those were opt-in unless you were like still in training, right? But you know, for whatever reason, now I get it. Hey, if you were slammed covering your own freight, because Hometown's cradle to grave with just with like one carrier rep per team, right? So these guys are cradle to grave. They're taking care of their books, but they opt in. And then what that really does is when you have, you know, the big, like we all kind of know how this works. When you have the biggest margin broker guy walk into a meeting like that, it helps culture because it reinforces that it's not just Brad or Nate or whoever the training manager is telling you, well, this is what and how you have to do, right? Like, we were very, very careful and conscious to not build islands and just be accessible. Everybody in that organization is accessible. If you've been there 2 days, you can walk up to the highest producer, which doesn't necessarily mean they're the best broker either. Let's be honest about that. But you can walk up to the highest broker and ask him anything, and they're gonna get up, they're gonna walk over to your workstation, and they're gonna help you, right? So once again, that's the team that did that with just a little bit of direction from senior leadership.
What were you looking for in hires to, you know, find these people? I mean, you've kind of mentioned that you guys got really lucky.
I like criminals. The highest producing brokers at Hometown all have criminal records.
I think Will, you might agree with that.
Yeah. So I won't say for my company in particular, but lots of successful salespeople I know do kind of have a checkered past or may have been through some things, and I think that there's something to be said about the resiliency of maybe turning things around and being able to pull from that, I guess. So yeah, I mean, a lot of the top producers or most successful people I know around Birmingham do kind of have some of them have checkered past.
Not saying all of them, right? But
yeah,
a few. And when I say criminal, take it with a grain of salt, right? But you know, I would rather take a guy that's 28 or a gal that's 28 years old that maybe dropped out of college, okay, that's a bartender or works in a warehouse and thinks, my God, I'm only ever going to make $60,000 or $70,000 a year. This is it for me, right? And you take them in and you bring them in, and my favorite part of this company or my ad agency or whatever else I've ever done, it's just watching people's lives change. And life's not all about money, right? But money makes your life easier, right? So it's super awesome to watch these people come in, and you know they're in a 2-bedroom apartment with four dudes, and then a year later they buy their first house and they're saving for their retirement. And you know, it's great. So profile wise, you know, we're like everybody else. We use a couple different vetting platforms, you know, Culture Index, Myers-Briggs, blah, 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 right, to find your ideal profile. But what's interesting is some of the highest producers and like maybe middle of the road producers, call them 30 to 75,000 or whatever books, their profiles on some of these things totally did not match up, right? So look, it's attitude and effort, like anything. I don't care if it's brokerage or if we own an excavating company. If you have the right attitude and the right effort and you're hungry, I think that we did a really good job, and Hometown's definitely improved it since I've left. They build Model Ts, man, and the Model T they build is building successful cradle to grave brokers while giving them a transitional skill set as well, right?
So how did you do that? Because you see this debate out there, a lot of times from the Chicago model people that you can't scale a decent sized brokerage. And, correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe Hometown's, 250, 300 million, somewhere in that range. You obviously built, a big brokerage with just cradle to grave. How are you guys, monitoring that with, enterprise accounts? And were you guys mainly in the SMB to get that big, or have you guys expanded to some split models?
Yeah, great question. So as it grew out, right? As we started to like the senior guys that I kind of mentioned, as they got their own teams, they were appointed one, carrier rep or CSR or whatever you want to call it, that would cover loads for that whole team, maybe 10, 12 people, right? But as far as the scale and growth of that, I don't understand that question. I guess sometimes, right? So how many loads can you cover a day personally and keep track of? That's what you're asking, Matt?
No, I guess I was asking if, for like the larger accounts, were you guys using the split model? Because a lot of people say, it's hard to scale a brokerage cradle to grave, that, the Chicago model to get into those enterprise.
Oh yeah. No, I go after AAA companies, right? Because they're stable, and I don't give a crap about their RFQs, and I don't want to make 8% margins, right? That's me personally talking, but that's what I pushed people to do when I was still at Hometown. AAA shippers are, in my opinion, just safer. Look, I don't want 3 enterprise shippers on a team of 10 people, right? Or whatever it is. I want each individual rep to have 20 plus shippers that move every month, and that maybe only move $2,000 to $5,000 a month, because guess what? 3 of them go away and their book doesn't go away and they don't get down in the mouth, right? I'm not saying that's right. That's just how we built this thing out.
That's how we do our cradle to grave. So we're split down the middle. So half my office is cradle to grave and the other half is the team model. And for our cradle to grave brokers, those are the companies that we're targeting. And it's the same exact theory or mindset behind it, right? The small to medium sized shippers with, they may be doing, 2 to 5 loads a week, but you get say 20 of them, and then you're sitting nice, and it's not real up and down, right? It's pretty stable.
Yeah, I guess. And oh, go ahead, Matt. Were you saying something?
No, you're good.
I guess for me is that we've all watched it happen, right? Where somebody's got 4 or 5 accounts, right? And 2 of them are big and 3 of them are not, and they're doing 40 grand. And then a new shipping manager comes in, or they decide they don't want to work with the brokerage, or you don't have assets. It doesn't matter how great of a job you've done and where your rates are. The new VP of sales comes in and says, "Oh, well, I'm transitioning over to XYZ." And then that person goes from, making some good commissions, from really feeling really good, to having to get back on the phones and sell, right? So I guess to me, I get the allure and the top line revenue, let's say, that looks awesome for enterprise shippers, but it just was never a focus of mine. Nate could definitely speak more to you about that, because I had no interest in doing that crap.
Would you say that Hometown, though, mainly was built then on SMB, AAA shippers? You got to 250, 300 just off of AAA customers, basically.
100%. Yeah. So, I'd be interested to hear well, let me ask you a question. So when you bring do you hire totally green at Black Box, or do they have some modicum of experience? How's that look?
It's very rare that we hire somebody with experience. I probably have maybe 4 to 5 that did come with a little bit of experience, but for the most part, no experience at all.
Okay, so exact same thing, right? So when you do that, so you're building your brokers, you're not buying them.
Exactly, yeah.
Right. So so Hometown's extensive training, right? But once they get on the phone, no matter what the market, because I don't care what the market's doing, right? Like, okay, in COVID, it was terrible. And now everybody cries about it's terrible. And, oh, it was great a year ago. I'm in the middle. Like, I don't want to hear that noise, right? What with green brokers, like, so outbound calls and emails and touches, right? Like I call NBD, new business development.
Mm-hmm.
Do you know what your ratio is to how many NBD to how many account launches once you put one of your team members live is?
Man, I could pull it up and probably figure it out, but I don't know offhand. The way that we do it really, so again, I mentioned that our office is kind of split. So I do, for the most part, hire everybody as a cradle to grave broker. But within the first 90 days, I'm making a decision. Is this person going to continue brokering, or am I going to shift them to carrier sales, dispatch, track and trace? So really the first 90 days, we're doing some intensive training before they get on the phones. So we continue training, but really we're monitoring them and kind of trying to figure them out. Where are their skills, where are they kind of lacking, and do we want to keep them as a broker, or do we want to pivot them somewhere else, right? So as far as touches to accounts landed, it would be tough to say with the new guys because it's probably not great, the first 90 days when they start their outreach. But with our more experienced guys, it's a lot more, I don't know.
Yeah, I'm talking totally fresh. So what I track that religiously, okay, to get to help build Hometown. And it was generally about 500 to 1. So 500 legitimate NBD outputs, be it calls or emails, to 1 launch. Now, sometimes it's better, sometimes it's worse, right?
Yeah.
But so I guess what I'm saying is the name of the game was launch accounts, and then the name of the game after that on how to make money at this deal is you get your ops tight, right? Yeah. So if at a minimum every day you're banging 100 plus calls, which I know is a dinosaur model from 25 years ago, but it still works, right? Mm-hmm. So once you're set live in Hometown, which they may do it differently now, I don't know, I'm sure they don't though, right? So if you're banging 500 calls a week, by month 2, once you're out of the 4-6 week training cycle, your training still continued, but we let them live. Like, because who cares, dude? These shippers aren't going to remember you called them 2 days later. Like, it's not that deep, right? So, month two, I had a ton of homes. I mean, I can't even count how many people that would launch 3 to 5 to 7 accounts, like within 6 to 9 weeks. And then you continue that, right? As you, like, where you would split them off, we would then have them go through ops training, which they would set with me. I didn't do the initial training. I don't have the patience for it. But once they had their accounts launched, then they'd slide over to me. And then we would bang out ops on how to get your margin up, on how to speak to dispatchers. Well, all the crap that you guys all know this, right?
Yeah.
But, the goal is to get everybody to 20 accounts as quickly as possible. And then start doing 5 or 10, what I call NBD a day in your downtime in the afternoon, right? So you keep growing your book while you're maintaining your book.
Yeah, no, I think that's a smart model. I think the toughest thing to do is if a new guy comes in and they land a great account, and then that monopolizes their time, and then kind of like you referenced a few minutes ago, the shipping manager leaves or something happens, they lose the account, and it's like, okay, now you got to go back to all these touches, and it's really tough to get that momentum going back, to sit and wallow. But if you're consistently doing outreach, doesn't have to be an insane amount, but while you're moving freight, you never really kind of have that drop off if you're steadily booking or building.
Yeah. So like I 100% believe that most freight brokers really only work about 3 or 4 hours a day. And I don't care if LinkedIn lights me on fire for saying that. I don't give 2 shits. Because here's the deal. I've watched it happen, not only at Hometown, but at other large brokerages here in Indianapolis, right? Because what ends up happening is somebody gets 20, 25, 30, 40, 50 grand, right? And it's all spot. Most of Hometown's freight spot. I get it. So you're covering same day freight, blah, 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 blah. But if you're ratting off that board and you're waiting for inbound calls and you text a little bit of your core carrier or whatever, dude, you actually work 3 to 4 hours a day. So don't tell me that you can't make 10 phone calls this afternoon, because I see you over at the pool table talking to your girlfriend, right?
Yeah.
So how do you stop that? That's the kicker on these doubles, right? Is that one, when the new guy, like you just said, Will, or new gal, whatever it is, comes in and they have 4 loads to cover and they're freaking out and they have the fear. I call it the fear. I'm like, the boards are going to cover those loads for you. Get on the phone and BD. I don't want to hear your excuses. I don't give 2 shits. Like, you want to drive a Bentley in 2 years? This is how you're going to do it.
Yeah.
Right?
I mean, I see it all the time, or even a quote, a quote, or they have one load. And so they're just sitting there just refreshing the board and not doing anything. So you kind of got to stay on top of them.
Well, there's 2 tasks in life. There's revenue generating and there's non-revenue generating. Which do you want to do? I'm gonna help you get to how you do that. Right? I'm passionate about that. And it's very, very easy to be bad busy in this. Right? It's super easy. To Will's point, well, I keep clicking refresh. Oh, I'm calling the Chicago Mafia trucks that say they'll go anywhere. They're going to want $8 a mile for a drive-in. Well, you're wasting your time. Stop making those outbound calls, right? Like, so I honestly, I get how sales is insanely important because if you don't have any freight to move, but ops is how you make money in logistics to me, right? I understand that's not for everybody, but it's what I found.
I'd agree with you. Kind of like you mentioned earlier, it's not terribly hard to get an account right, but to get a good account and to grow your load share within the account and then retain that account. I feel like there's so much content or just post or speech about sales in general, but not a lot of people talk about the retention and growing that load share and expanding margins and kind of have that lasting customer. I feel like a lot of people get into a kind of like a cycle, customer, the new customer. You're just working all these new customers all the time, as opposed to, we have customers we've worked since our first month, and we really like built our company around that stability.
Yeah, I mean, I have customers that are 6, almost 7 years old, right? Like for the agency thing, and I get that, but I guess what I'm saying too is I think it's really hard for leadership of freight brokerages, and I've talked to other people, and maybe you can second this, Will, that these people hit a plateau, and it's not burnout. It is they hide.
Yeah.
Like, they hide in ops, right? And I think having these ops trainings, I call them boot camps, right? You go to Brad's boot camp, right? And Nate had his sales meeting, and continuing those things can really, really help propel this world that we live in, no matter what the market's doing either, right? Like, I'm sure, Will, that you guys launch a lot of accounts every month, whether the freight rates are up or the freight rates are down. Yeah. I don't understand, and if I'm getting off topic here, guys, just cut me off, but I don't understand a lot of the talking heads talking about that shit. I'm like, what are you doing? Like,
no, I'm with you 100%. So we had a meeting on Monday. We were kind of talking about the market, this, that, and they're like, Will, what's your take? And I said, well, really, the take doesn't matter. Just the mood and the theme that we want around the offices. It doesn't matter whether the market's up or down. We're going to add customers. We're going to grow. And I think that, I made a post about it earlier in the week. Yeah, like the people that are constantly complaining, waiting for it to pick back up, aren't doing anything. But I see people growing in this market. And I think it's about your mindset and what you're doing to be proactive rather than reactive, and just kind of waiting for things to pick up. But they're never going to pick up if the action's not there, right? Action comes before momentum.
Yeah, and I mean, at the end of the day, dude, you create your own market.
Exactly.
You create your own market, you do more outbound, right? And it's just one of those things. And
so we have so my partner Logan, man, it's kind of a similar setup. There's a lot of synergies in what you're describing and kind of your story with Hometown and me. But so my partner Logan does the initial training, and he's got a chart, calls it Logan's Law of Sales, and it's essentially what you're describing, right? New broker lands a few accounts, say they're doing 25, 3,000 a week. They quit the outreach, and then it just drops off. And we've seen it happen so many times. These reps, they come in, they get started early, they quit the outreach, and then they lose an account or it slows up, and they're just sitting there, piddling with their thumbs. But the people,
how do you combat that? What do you do in that situation?
They do touches every day, so they don't get tied up in ops like you're describing. They're not sitting there booking their loads like, okay, that's a good day's work. We have things that they need to do, and it's not just, okay, it was a complete day of work because I booked the loads that I was sent. I'm constantly outreach, building, networking, and trying to add customers, and at least making progress towards new business.
How does that look on an accountability metric for you guys? Like, what is it that you do? Are you having like I always like, and this isn't freight, this was car business shit or advertising or whatever. Like, I like to have 3 wins in the morning and 3 wins in the afternoon, right? Like, how do you keep that morale going at Black Box for that? Because it is quite discouraging when that happens to you, right? Like how does that look for you guys?
Man, so I'm honestly the worst one to ask about that. Of everybody, ownership and management, I'm pretty hands off with the cradle to graves. I kind of more oversee the enterprise and teams and the operations through that. But so we're actually one of our sponsors, Sales Dash. We're swapping over to their system where we'll have kind of oversight so we can see the touches, the email through it, the calls. So we're going to have Ring Central integrated with Firefly's kind of a reader app, so we can kind of monitor and see what they're doing. Everybody's on a different, I don't want to call it a schedule, but they have certain things they're supposed to do every day in order for it to be a complete work day, right? And depending on where they are and what they're producing, it varies. But throughout all of that, there's outreach in it, and we've got people tracking it. Not that it's just a call. It's not that we're like, hey, did you make this many calls?
I get it. Like what you're doing is you're building habits, not goals. I don't give two shits about goals. I want you to build habits.
Yeah.
Right? And I don't care about your motivation because your motivation is going to go away. I'm going to build habits in you, and we're going to build discipline, and that's going to get you through the lean time. So you're doing that.
Yeah.
Just a little differently or
yeah. We do meetings. We do. I mean, we do one-on-ones to kind of gauge people how they're doing, what's working, what's not working. Group meetings so people can talk and the people really producing will get in there and talk about it. Or again, everybody here is pretty accessible as well. So there's a new guy struggling with something. We have a good. I want to say it's a good team atmosphere. I feel like a lot of sales offices, it's cutthroat, right? We've got a margin.
We're not that, so it sounds like you guys aren't either.
Yeah, but everybody wants to see the other person do well. It's I could be oblivious to it, right? Because I am, it's my company, right? But I really and truly feel like everybody wants to see everybody else succeed. Like it feels like a team here, not just a, me versus you, or like, am I on top this week or are you on top? Somebody else's success is usually, it's celebrated.
That's awesome.
Yeah, you're kind of seeing that now too. I know just because Will's got to run at 3:45, and I know you love this topic, and some of our audience will too. But kind of what you're doing now with the carrier side of things, and we've talked a lot about this, helping carriers understand their P&L, how to get direct shippers, just different things in their organization. Is kind of what you're focusing on since you've left hometown. You'd love to get into that a little bit and kind of what you're seeing on the carrier side and kind of what you're doing there.
Yeah, I would love to talk about that. Thank you. So, after I was always very carrier centric, and I literally have done kind of what Avalanche Freight does for a few different carriers without charging them, quite frankly, right? I think we all know that most carrier, the bulk of carriers have under 10 trucks and a ton of them under 5, right? And because barrier to entry is so low to start a trucking company, just as low as to start a brokerage, in my opinion. So these guys get in there and they just there's vultures all over them, right? Shady brokers, shady insurance agents, shady factoring companies. And then what they don't understand too is that if they only have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 trucks, whatever it is, they don't really think that they have a value to go to a shipper when they actually do, right? So I put these guys a few things, like I help them vet their tech, right? Let's look at what their spend is on their P&L from their fuel, their factoring, even their equipment, their leasing, blah, 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 right?
A lot of them don't know that, right? From what your conversations, a lot of them.
Yeah, not all of them. Yeah, not all of them, Matt, but a lot really don't understand what their true rate per mile or what their true spend is, right? So we kind of work that backwards and go through that. But then kind of the meat of what Avalanche Freight does is that I run them through a sales training that's very, very similar to what a broker goes through, only the rebuttals are different. The value statements are different. And, we try to help them pick up direct shippers. Now, I'm not going to say that we get all these guys away from the boards completely. We do not, or I do not, right? But I have a prime example of a guy I've worked with for a few years, flatbed, does OD, does some heavy haul, does a lot of freight for me personally. And this is kind of where I had that idea start, because I helped him the past 3 years with this. And it was beneficial to me because he gave me all of his trucks when I needed them for fair rates, right? But, now he's up to 12 trucks in the past year in a declining market, where I've helped him get into some direct shippers that are regional. A lot of this is kind of regional. This isn't going to, I don't have the expertise that Will does on enterprise shippers. I don't have the patience to deal with them. I'm not a guy that's going to help a 300 truck mega fleet, right? They should have this shit dialed in already. But, what I do know is that I've helped them how to negotiate with brokers too, right? Because you got $1,000 load posted on the board from, $1,000 flatbed load from Indianapolis to Chicago, right? And how do you get that extra $100? Because if you have 5 trucks and every day you're pulling 5 loads off of the board for your backhaul or your head haul to get your own direct freight, what do brokers really want to hear, right? And then I also teach these guys to bypass the floor of brokerages. And that's not to offend anyone on a brokerage floor, but you need to get to a VP or a director level if you're a small carrier, so you get access to all of that floor's freight, right? Because we all know that a ton of brokers are just kind of lazy and they're going to throw their freight on that and maybe send the one text. But when you've got a brokerage like a Will size, it's got 30, 40, 50 people in it, your guys don't know what everybody else is doing, right? So, I try to set meetings up with these guys at I do set meetings up with contacts I have at brokerages for these carriers, even when they're small, to get that relationship going. That in turn helps Hometown, or it would help Black Box or whoever it would be, right? That maybe they've landed some projects, or maybe they're doing an RFQ, and this backhaul or this head haul works perfectly for this small shipper. So scale wise, this company, I got no idea what I'm doing. I know that I have more customers, or I have more carriers than I want particularly or need, right? And I'm helping people, and I'm in the service of others. And I really, really love that, right? So I know people probably say, their company is like a little bit of a labor of love, but the carrier consulting side for me is literally a labor of love. I like it. I get compensated well, but I help these guys make more money. And that is awesome,
Yeah, there's definitely I was just gonna say there's definitely a need for it. I mean, just dealing with a lot of the small carriers, maybe even the owner operators, 1 to 5 trucks. Man, I mean, even sometimes when I have to take calls on loads, I mean, I can tell, man, if they just ask a certain way or know how to communicate with me, I'd probably get them an extra 100, 200. Or even if they know how to present themselves. It's like, hey, if I feel good about you, I'm willing to pay you a little bit more. But if you call in and I'm kind of unsure if you're even, good for the load, I'm definitely not going to pay you more.
Yeah, and I 100% will. And then everyone hates all the double brokering, all the fraud. So do I. But let's think about it this way: these guys that are legit, they have a lot of power in this market with all the fraud that's going on. So I teach them about that, on how they set themselves apart at brokerages too, not only shippers. Because let's say you got 5 trucks, man, it doesn't sound like a lot of money, right? But if you got 5 trucks and you're picking up 5 loads every day, right? It's 25 loads a week. Let me get you $100 more for each of those trucks that you're pulling off the board every week. That's $2,500 a week. Let's start doing the math.
Adds up. I mean, even things is small as detention charges, right? Let's notify the broker at 2 hours. Let's document it. Let's get it signed on the in and out. So let's not go to invoice 6 days later and say, hey, we need to. So what are you talking about? I can't pay you. We released the load 9 days ago. I didn't know that your truck was late. I have no way to verify this. I just have you sending me an email telling me that you were there for 8 hours.
Right.
So $600.
So I do a ton of training on ops with them as well, on what I would want to see as a brokerage. Exactly what you're talking about, Will. Right. Yeah. But in a very polite, not a demanding way. Hey, this load was supposed to pick up at 1,300 on Friday. It's 16:35. We haven't been touched. Do you mind asking the shipper if they could get working on us? And also, when I bring them into these other brokerages, though, we work out the detention on the front end of that for every load, no matter what the shipper is or the broker. That's why I get these guys into talking to a guy like you, Will, maybe not somebody on the floor too, because then it's easy to work with, right? And then, so yeah, they know they're going to get some guaranteed detention. The broker knows that they're probably going to get better than market rates, and the carrier knows that they're going to get fed. So it's really helping us all, shipper, carrier, broker, all, one, cut costs if and need be as a shipper perspective. Two, the broker makes money. Three, the carrier makes money. That's what this is all about.
Yeah, 100%. I think anytime that everybody can work together, all three parties, be in sync, it's a win, right? It kind of feels like a lot of times it turns into a me versus you battle, or man, when the market's down, everybody's mad and wants to point fingers. But we've got a lot of carriers that we work hand in hand with. A lot of my oversized stuff is really just a small group of carriers, and to be frank, they know a lot more about it than me. So when it's 94 feet long and 130 inches wide, I'm just calling my guy and saying, hey, like, what do you need here? And then I'm taking our markup and I'm bringing it to the customer. And he knows exactly like where I'm going to send it and everything. And it's it's a really nice system.
Yep. Yeah. So I totally get that. I do a ton of wide, heavy, tall, blah, blah, blah. Right. And you got to have those guys. You pull that shit off the board, you're going to lose your customer probably, or something's going to go wonky eventually. But, so I guess I get a little frustrated from the broker side, from the shipper side, and the carrier side, to where I get real tired of hearing these carriers whine about brokers are suppressing rates. Well, it's $1 trillion space, and who pays the brokers? The shippers do, right? Like, stop crying to me, Mr. Carrier, and start finding yourself some solutions. And what the biggest problem with a lot of these guys is that they don't know how to sell their own company. Besides all of their P&L problem, besides the bad tech they're overpaying and their insurance is too much. And I get it. I totally get it. Like, this industry is full of vultures for carriers, but it's like, let's teach them some value. In turn, you can show a brokerage a ton of value, or if it's a direct shipper, same thing, right? So I just don't have a whole lot of patience for all the crying that goes on in the logistics space. It's ridiculous to me.
Do you have a lot of your customers that are crying to you, or you ever had to fire any customers on the carrier consulting side yet?
I've had carriers burn, like decide to part ways with some of the shippers that were taking advantage of them. If that's what you're asking, Matt.
No, I meant for your clients. If you had to fire any clients of yours.
Carriers?
Yeah.
Yeah, 100%. Like, because if they won't, the upfront vetting process of that is that I want to see your P&L, and if you won't show it to me, I'm not doing business with you. Right? I'm just not. Because I don't know if you're going to be telling me the truth, right? Most of the people that I've helped are all referral. I don't even have a website for this thing. I don't know. I don't need one. Like, it sounds super weird, but I just don't, right? And I have stopped working with 2 carriers out of the now 13 or 14 that I've helped or I'm actively working with. And that was from an ops side, Matt. Like, they had too many heads, right? Like, one person can cover all these trucks. Why do you have 3 dispatchers? Doesn't make any sense. Why do you have an accounting person? Doesn't make any sense, right? So sometimes they don't like what I have to say, and that's fine.
You always shoot it straight. I mean, that's one of the things I like about you. You're a straight to the point guy. We're gonna have to have you on again, Brad. I mean, it was fun. There's a lot of clips from this, that we could take on a lot of hot topics, and it's kind of cool to kind of see your journey and kind of how you've done things.
I appreciate that a lot. I mean, Will, it's awesome to see you guys growing. Matt, we talk or text quite a bit. Anytime you guys want to chat, I'd be more than happy to engage.
Yeah, well, let's do it again. I really enjoyed it.
Awesome. Thanks, guys.
Yeah, thanks again, Brad. We'll talk soon. Maybe we'll get you on with one of these carriers that's more struggling or with the market, and we kind of have some hot topics sometime in the future. And
we'll let you get back on your motorcycle. I know you're chomping at the bit.
Yeah, awesome. Thanks, guys. Have a great weekend.
Thanks, Brad.
All right.
Yeah, it was fun. I mean, there's a lot of clips you could take from that.
Yeah, I'll go through it. I'm sure that we'll post one or two. Yeah, he was a great guest. I really enjoyed the dialogue.
Yeah, if I was gonna open a brokerage someday, I would model it very closely to how he's done it with a lot of the things he said. Well, him and his co-founders.
Yeah, 100%. He had some good stuff to say. Definitely.
Shout out to our sponsors. Taft's will have their banner, one of the best factoring companies out there, based in Kansas City. We're going to have their banner up here soon. And yeah, shout out to Trio doing our back office, Sales Dash. That's Will's using them. I've known Josh for a while. Great company. Obviously, Black Box if you're looking for a W-2 job in Birmingham. HD if you're looking to be an agent anywhere nationwide, and we'll see you guys next week, either once or twice.
Yeah, sounds like a plan. Yeah, keep an eye out. We'll have some announcements. Well, I enjoyed it, Matt. Enjoy your weekend. I'm gonna log off.
Sounds good, man. We'll talk later.
All right, talk soon.
Bye bye.